And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So, this week we'll be talking about several topics that has recently transpired this past week. So, first we have, the NBA is now in playoffs mode. So, they're in the conference finals already. You have, I think, the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Atlanta Hawks. I think Atlanta won the first game. Then you have Los Angeles Clippers versus the Phoenix Suns. And Phoenix was up 2-1, and to date, the Clippers were able to win their game at home court. So it's going to be interesting what's going on there. Anyway, well, if you notice, not many superstars are left in the battling it out to win the championship trophy. Well, that didn't stop Mr. LeBron James to speak about and complain about regarding what's going on with the compressed season as well as the short turnaround with regards to from the previous year, which they won the championship, and whether that's sulking or does he have credence regarding the issue here. We'll talk about that in a bit. Next is, would you believe that the rich people, the uber rich actually, pays little to no tax? One would assume that the more money that you acquire or earn should be taxed more, right? But that's not the case. How's that possible? We'll talk about it in a bit. Next, we have, we're always looking for alternative sources of energy to replace fossil fuel. So obviously, the adoption of electric vehicles is important. Another alternative is solar adoption. In particular, rooftop adoption is important. But there's some groups who have vested interest that this does not go through. What's the reason? We'll talk about that as well. And also the concept of buying now, paying later is a great idea, but there are a lot of pitfalls. So we'll talk about as well. And next, that hot topic, which is cryptocurrency, the values is keep on going up and down. But the question here is, who's going to adopt it? Which financial institution? Which countries? Well, there are some countries, in this case Paraguay, who's going to enact their own law wherein using cryptocurrency to pay as a means for uh, as a legal tender is now acceptable. And finally, for our last story, stay tuned for that one. We have an interesting one. A very old game, almost 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago, is making a comeback here. So we'll talk about that. Anyway, so as I mentioned, for our first story here, we have Mr. LeBron James stating that the NBA's pandemic business is back, which is good, but at what cost? Because as you may notice, especially in particular in the playoffs, there are many star players who were injured due to the shortened season in a sense, and obviously there was ongoing debate with regards to should the season be shortened or lengthened and ensure that there's little back-to-back games so that, and obviously if you played the day before and then you play again the next day, the short recovery time increases the risk of injury, and could be long. Both Mr. LeBron James and Mr. Anthony Davis were down due to different types of injuries and uh, stop their bid to win back-to-back championships this year. And obviously, LeBron's clout in terms of using social media, where was it? Yeah, using social media to air out his concerns regarding, why is this happening? I don't know if it's just complaining or sulking, but it makes credence in what he's saying now. Obviously, there were discussions from last year when the season concluded that when should the season start. There was debate whether to start on December or earlier this year around January. But obviously, the big issue is the deal, the Media TV deal that they have with ABC and ESPN, that to showcase their games during the holidays where they get significant, revenue or advertisements to revenue to advertisements. Now, obviously, one of the main contentions here, as mentioned, is without proper recovery, players can fall victim to a variety of injuries. It would start with minor aches and breaks, and then eventually it would lead to something more significant. And as you can see, you have star players like James Harden, who wasn't totally 100% when he played again in the playoffs. Then injuries, actually more on being unlucky, where Kyrie Irving was injured. Then you have on the other side, as I mentioned, the Los Angeles Lakers. You have LeBron James, recovering, still not even 100%. Then Anthony Davis was injury prone. So I don't know if it's got something to do more with his, I know, regimen, how he keeps himself in shape and so forth. And then you have other players. You have, I think Mike Conley was injured when the playoffs started for the Utah Jazz, but he was in, he had time to recover, but still he wasn't 100%, and that costed the Utah Jazz to move move to the conference finals. And then you have the Los Angeles Clippers, even though they're vying a spot for the championship round. You have Kawhi Leonard, who's injured still. Question is, will he be able to come back? And it provides more credence to what Mr. James has been saying all along, that you know uh, the NBA games are more catered to the superstars. And obviously you have the had issue with the Philadelphia 76ers when they were where they were eliminated by the Atlanta Hawks, right? You have Joel Embiid, who was somewhat injured, and then you have the injured Ben Simmons, who was not injured but who would not shoot if his life depended upon it. It's a totally different issue there. But anyway, James is using Twitter to apologize for the NBA fans for missing not just him but other star players. Now, obviously, for me, it's more on a personal preference that he's complaining of this issue because he does not get to repeat his championship here. Obviously, it derailed his plans, so to speak. No matter what plans you're you're aiming for, you know things do change here. And question is, if they're so what do you call this? If they're so predisposed to say that an NBA player's health is more important, then why not push that agenda with their collective bargaining agreement, so that this will be taken into account with regards to what do you call this, their health and safety. Well, according to Mr. James himself, he stated that it's all about the business side as well, and and he gets it. So don't complain if you get injured because of the circumstances. You bring it up with the league and try to find a middle ground to fix those problems. And at the end of the day, you still get paid $40 million, right? That's a lot of money. Not many people can earn that much in a given year. And as mentioned here, that the money rules everything, right? Or was it? Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's about the money, and the money means the media rights that ABC or ESPN has paid for them to be able to telecast the games live, especially those big, I won't say big pay-per-view, but more let's say Los Angeles Clippers versus LA, those big TV, big network, big markets like Boston, LA, uh, Brooklyn, and many more cities. And what's according to the article here, also they're stating that maybe, just maybe, since even though Mr. James has been booted out with the playoffs, is trying to make wave so that he can bring up more hype with regards to his upcoming film. Now, whether that's a cheap way of free advertising, if it works, it gets more people to watch his film, which is another interesting topic, which is would people be excited to watch another or a sequel to the very popular original Space Jam, which was led by Mr. Michael Jordan here? Anyway, so what's interesting here, according to the NBA spokesman, Mr. Mike Bass, he stated that the incidents that happened or injuries were virtually the same this season as compared to the previous season. Whether star level or all star players missed games due to injury. Now, obviously, you need to look at several more years, not just the year before. If you can see a pattern here, now, obviously, for the longest time, they've been playing 72 games 72, 82 games in a given calendar year. Now, obviously, it makes sense for them, especially for the home games, for them to generate more revenue for the home arenas, which nowadays you can see more people are allowed to watch, sporting events. And reducing the number of it does not make sense or does not make the bottom line any reason to pursue that. So either they find a better way so that the money is spread out even more and so forth, and obviously, the NBA's decision to return quickly is, more on the financial aspect rather than anything else. At the end of the day, if companies like Disney, AT&T, and even Warner Media is paying NBA roughly $2 billion per year. And obviously, the Christmas Day package is one of their premium assets. So especially during Christmas Day, they have double headers, and the New Year's package and so forth. That obviously a lot of people are at home, relaxing with their family and watching games, whether it be basketball, and obviously they have to compete with other sports as well. You have baseball. I think by then, baseball season is over, but they have to compete with the NFL season, which is already in high gear around that time, going to the follow next year to the playoffs and so forth. So obviously competing with them is a big endeavor here. So not being able to push through with their schedule could have an impact with their bottom line. And obviously, would it encourage those companies to partner with them in the future? Well, obviously, they decided otherwise to do not postpone it anymore here. And obviously, at the end of the day, if the games are not, does not start on time, so the media package or the media, the TV that they're paying for to telecast the games as well as content. Obviously, it's not just being telecast to regular television or networks. You have streaming services simultaneously being broadcasted. So obviously, a lot of people can watch it worldwide, not just in the North American region. And obviously, compared to last year, there were no fans allowed. Well, they're now slowly allowing more fans to watch it, especially during the playoffs. You can see the arenas are jam packed again, which is kind of weird if you think about it. For almost a year, we don't see people, attending large venues at the same time. And it's not just the partnership with the media, the TV rights. You have the viewership as well, and based on data that they have, the number of viewers is typically a little over a million viewers throughout the season, especially national televised games, and in particular in the playoffs, they have it more than twice the amount. You have 3 million viewers, so it's pretty significant, which is kind of ironic. The play-in tournament where you have Lakers versus the what's the team here? The Golden State Warriors have almost 6 million viewers just to stay in. That's why star power is still a big draw. And if you can bring in more superstars, which is at the end of the day, which attracts more viewers, especially young kids, to watch the games, then all for the better. But now, with not the up and coming, he's already here. Mr. Trey Young is doing a tremendous job for leading the Hawks to, if ever, for their first ever championship since way back the St. Louis Hawks. So before they even moved to Atlanta there. And on the other side, it would be exciting to see the Phoenix Suns go to the championship again since the time of Charles Barkley, which is way back in early 90s. So you could just imagine the fans in those cities had to wait for their team to reach the pinnacle of NBA, which is winning the Larry O'Brien championship trophy here. So, good luck to them. And obviously, at the end of the day, you'd like to have superstars, you know, playing in the playoffs. But at the end of the day, if the game is exciting, you have the best of the best competing for the championship. I think people would watch it regardless. Anyway, so good luck to them. And by the way, actually, I was following the Bucks the other day, and they lost to the Hawks. Very disappointing. So we'll see how it pans out. Anyway, next we have here. So as I mentioned earlier, it was interesting, right? If you think about it in terms of taxation, right? The more money that you earn, that you have, you should be taxed more. Somewhat fair if you think about it. The less has should be taxed less, the more should pay more. But in reality, in particular in the United States, you have the super rich people pay little to no income tax at all. And according to BBC.com here, and you know, obviously it wasn't a surprise for me. I know they're paying little to no tax using, I would say, loopholes. So would you consider that they're cheating? No, not really. So let's see here. So as I mentioned, the billionaires that we're talking about is Mr. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, just to name a few. Now, there was a leaked info regarding on a news website regarding the income tax that those billionaires are paying or not paying technically. Now, whether that's considered fair or not, well, we'll dive a little bit deeper here. And so you have here Mr. Jeff Bezos, the former CEO of Amazon, paid no tax at all on the year 2007 as well as 2011. Okay? Then you have Mr. Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla and SpaceX actually, paid nothing in 2018. Now, how's that even possible? Is it even considered illegal? So should the IRS, uh, sue them, for fraud and so forth? Actually, there's nothing illegal about to their said activities. So obviously, they own companies, businesses, and their valuation is tied up in terms of share. And if you think about it, shares are not taxed until you earn dividends or sell your shares, so that the proceeds that you earn from it, that's the only time it's taxed. And obviously, in their vast experience with their lawyers and accountants and so forth, they're always finding ways to shelter their earnings so that they maximize their earnings with little to no tax, no taxation and so forth. Now, there's had been growing debate with regards to not just the regular citizen, whether that's fair or not. Then you also have the government is looking at it closely whether they should be taxed more, because obviously, you know, no matter what the government does, even if they increase the taxation here, the Uber really reached the top 1% of the people in the world or in the United States. There are always loopholes that they could take advantage so that they can pay little to no tax at all. And obviously, this is providing more people becoming more richer, and the widening of the inequality, so to speak, which is, may sound like unfair and unreasonable, right? And according to ProPublica, they mentioned that the richest 25 Americans pay less than 16% of tax. Pretty substantial, right? Typically, whether you're in the United States or in the Philippines, you pay in the north of 20-30% tax. So depending on the bracket that you belong into, right? This is just according to the gross income, right? So obviously, one would wonder, if you're an individual citizen, why am I paying more despite me earning less? How that happen? And then those people who earns more are taxed less. Sounds unreasonable, right? And the key here, as I mentioned, so the how are they able to do that is the ultra wealthy people are able to sidestep the system, so it's legal technically in an entirely legal way. Okay, so obviously they have the enormous resources that they have people underneath them, or they hire, so they have enormous ability to find deductions, find credits, and exploit loopholes in the system. So unless the government cracks down on those loopholes to ensure that If you're a citizen, regardless if you're poor or middle income or rich, it applies to everyone. Not just because you own a company, you can hide your assets or your earnings, your valuation through shareholders, and you'll not be taxed unless they change the law. Then that's the only time that could affect their approach. And it's not just that; the value of their wealth grows enormously through their ownership of shares in the company. So obviously, let's say you have 1,000 shares and it's worth 100,000, and then if it grows over time, the government cannot tax that until such time you withdraw or you sell those shares. So it can inflate it, which is in a good way. You earn more and you only get what you need. And actually they do a something more, I won't say devious, but another way of whether to, if they really need income to spend, whether buying houses, cars, and so forth. In this case, they also mentioned that they take aggressive tax deduction. So they do this by borrowing funds for their lifestyle. So take note. So they do not use their earnings from their ownership or their, being stockholders. They actually borrow from the bank. So rather than use their earnings, they borrow from the bank, let's say to buy a house, big mansions, whatnot, and even cars or even planes. So what they do is buy an asset. Okay? Either build one or inherit one using their fortune and borrow against their wealth. So technically, when you acquire an asset, you have tax deductible here, which is beneficial for your business, right? So that's why they are able to practically get little to zero income tax here. So obviously, if you don't realize any gain or sale with your any stock, there is no income there. So there's no tax. It could not be taxed. It would be impossible to be taxed here. So obviously what they do here, as mentioned, is they then borrow from a bank at a relatively low interest rate. Obviously, if you have a partnership with many banks where you do business with your own business, and you leave off that and can use the interest expenses as deduction, so you even generate more more deduction for your tax, and that's how they do it. And now you have Biden here, the current president of the United States, to do something about it. Now whether that plans will be effective or be enough, somewhat debatable here. And obviously, the plans for Mr. Joe Biden here is to increase tax on the richest Americans. Now, as I mentioned earlier, increasing the tax of those uber rich may not matter at all. Obviously, unless you close the loopholes of the legalities of how individuals can find ways to reduce the tax to practically zero, then it would not make sense anyway. So even if you tax the uber rich, the one who gets affected is the one in the middle, the one who earns a high income, or the one in the uh, yeah, the middle income, and close to the top 1% here. Now, whether that's considered illegal, unfair, it may look from the optics that it seems unfair. How come those individuals are able to have the benefits? That's why governments provide tax breaks, benefits, in this case, loopholes for businesses that have, if you have a corporation that supports the economy here, and obviously they get to benefit the most here. So question is, should we complain about it, or should we ask our government to look at it closely and close those loopholes so that everyone is fair game? The more the money that you own, whether it's cash, liquid, assets, part of shareholders, share you hold shareholding in a company, you still pay a substantial tax here, and until such time that happens, then we still have to wait and see. And obviously, if you have zero assets, you still pay a substantial income. But on the other hand, if you own shares of a company, whether it's worth $1 billion or €1 billion, you get tax deductible, right? Which is kind of ironic, right? That's why I think there was an interview where Mr. Warren Buffett was sharing that he pays even less tax than his secretary. So how ironic is that? he has a better accountant than his secretary here. So whether that's the fault of those billionaires, or maybe the government has to do their part as well, and you know, so that there's equality here. Anyway, next we have here, as I mentioned, we have companies that are trying to block the solar adoption rooftop, so to speak. So obviously, the transition to moving away to fossil fuel to sustain our economy, you know, our businesses is, finding ways like the electric vehicle adoption, and now we have, solar rooftop adoption. But the thing here is there are companies, especially the utilities, have a vested interest that this does not push through. And let's see here. Yeah, so as I mentioned, so there are interest groups, special interest group, weird name that they call it, are trying to find a way to stop the growth of rooftop solar panels here. And according to the USPIRG, or Education Fund, and also the Environment America Research and Policy Center, obviously, it makes sense, especially for locations that is there's full of sunlight that you could take advantage. So it makes sense to implement solar panels in your rooftop so that you can take advantage. Now obviously, cost is a main hurdle in terms of each solar panels, how much it costs. But if you live in Arizona or in Utah, where there's plenty of sunlight whole year round, then you need to take advantage. Obviously, the initial upfront cost will be expensive, but in the long run, you don't rely as much if you're off grid, so to speak, here. And there were reports or case studies from all over the United States, and I think you know that can be applied to other countries as well, depending on the locations here. There are strategies that promotes fossil fuel lobbying groups that are adopted by many utilities now, which is kind of ironic. Those same companies that conducted the study are now against it. Anyway, so that includes fixed rate charges on rooftop solar, or putting restrictions on or killing net metering programs that ensure solar panel owners receive fair compensation for the clean energy they supply to the electric grid. Now, obviously, those groups have significant clout in terms of lobbying groups with corresponding politicians in their particular cities or even particular states here, and whether should they be granted or hold the progression of solar adoption here. It's always about or it's up to the politicians here to make a stance here. Obviously, if you want to push your agenda, and if this is what the citizens want, then you should go on with it. And obviously, if you're the utilities, then you need to evolve your business model, because it will have a long term impact in their business model, that utilities like Meralco that we have here would not be a viable business in the next decade or even century here, if the country is really dead set on moving away towards fossil fuel reliance here. And obviously, it's up to the state or the lawmakers to promote and even defend policies that support growth of rooftop solar panels and speed of national transition towards 100 renewable energy. I think any countries or states should be looking at this tremendously now. Obviously, the adoption of solar panels is a case-to-case basis depending on your location here. Obviously, if it's cloudy in your area, or it tends to more often rain than have sunlight there, then it won't make sense. That's why you look for alternative ways to find alternative ways to replace reliance on fossil fuel or electricity here. So you could use hydro is one, wind is another, then you have solar as another one, and then you have now EV vehicles being adopted here. Now, how fast can we adapt it for the rest of the world? We don't know, so we'll see. Anyway, okay, next. So people nowadays spend a lot, especially with their online purchases. Obviously, businesses have been offering. Used to be have to pay cash. Then they offer the concept of credit card, so it's a cashless, seamless transaction, right? and they offer this buy now pay later. Now an app is offering this, which makes it more convenient for consumers, so they could easily buy and not worry about when I buy the item that I have to pay it right away when the credit card bill or billing statement comes later that month. Now obviously it gives you a, what do you call this, a sense of false sense of security, in a sense that you don't have any billing, but in reality you do have, right? Whether it be 1 month or 2 months. Actually, in I think BDO offers that. I used to have a BDO credit card, and they offer 2 months, 3 months to pay later, and obviously that sounds great at the start, but when that kicks in, you have to pay for it, and obviously they're always encouraging you to to buy more items, so you have to pay more, and obviously when you pay for your purchases, that's what where they don't earn money, because if you pay the whole lot, they don't earn money, but if you don't pay the whole lot, you pay interest, and I think that's where they generate their revenue. That's how they earn their money, especially for those banks, or in this case the app services that's offering this. And obviously it's a double-edged technology. It could be beneficial and also detrimental if you don't take a closer look at your expenses here. So let's see. So as I mentioned, so typically, obviously, as I mentioned, point of sale loans has a short-term, allow you for short-term financing that allows you to divide your purchase. Typically, could be divided depending on the number of months, 3 months, 6 months, or even 12 months, or even 24 months in some cases. So they would allow you to extend your billings later on or push it down the line. So you have firms like Affirm, Klarna, Afterpay, and QuadPay. So they're popular apps that can spread out. So similar to how a credit card works, I think. But what's interesting here, the industry has been growing significantly. How significant? Well, more than 200%, 215% since last year to this year alone. So you could just imagine the benefits that it brings, but also the downside of relying so much in this technology. Obviously, you'll be tempted to buy more because of the low to 0% offerings. But once you don't pay those due dates, the interest rates will kick in tremendously, and it's like gambling here. And the only ways to be in that pitfall is the overspending. Right, at the end of the day, is being responsible citizens is the key here. You use technology so that it provides you convenience, so to speak, right? But you do not take advantage of it, so that keep on buying that, you reach the max limit of your card, or you break your credit limit and so forth. So it's never a good good time. If you don't have the money, then don't buy it in the first place, or maybe earn some extra income or save some. Then when you have the necessary resources, then you can buy the items that you really want in the future. And obviously, it's not only just the overspending is the issue, the interest rate. It's going to kill you. And it's pretty substantial here. So obviously the zero interest sounds easy enough, but as mentioned, once you don't pay the entire amount and you go beyond the period, they can charge you as much as 30%. So that's pretty significant. So especially if you buy a very expensive item, whether it's television, smartphones, I don't know, DSLR cameras, or whatever. If you buy more expensive, and it could increase significantly, and just because of being paying late here is detrimental to any individual here, and it goes downward here quickly, just like when you gamble in a casino, thinking that if you lost, let's say, 10,000 here, then you try to say to yourself that you want to recover it. I'll invest another 10,000, hoping I can get it back and even get more. Well, that's not a recipe for success here. Anyway, so obviously the allure of using such technology is, or benefits is, ideal, but if you're responsible enough, you could always take advantage of it. Again, at the end of the day, I use it for personal benefits, whether buying items. So if I need to buy, let's say, a furniture or an appliance here, then I'll buy it, as long as I know that I could pay those premiums here, or in this case, those installments. If not, then maybe you need to reconsider your uh, purchasing habit here, and have a plan of sorts. Maybe, or in my case, what I do is maybe I buy one item at a time until I pay the whole lot. Then that's the only time I could look at something. Then I'll pay for another item that's, let's say, I'll pay in installment. Actually, the latest item that I'm paying with installment is the latest smartphone, the S21 Ultra. So, before that, I was able to finish my the installment pay for my older smartphone, the S8. So after 2 years, I was able to pay it off. And then 2 years later, then, when I decided to buy a new one, because the battery is always an issue after 2 3 years, then I decided to buy a new smartphone. Now, will that work for everyone else? It's a case to case basis. So, we have to be responsible, think wisely, so to speak. Anyway, so next we have, since we're talking of payment here, now one interesting alternative way to pay or to transact with businesses is the adoption of cryptocurrency. Now, obviously, it's very popular nowadays. The ongoing trend with regards to people investing their money, their nest eggs here, but with the volatility of of its valuation. When I started talking about the peak interest of many people, the examples like Bitcoins as high as value of $60,000, and now it has dipped down to almost less than 30,000, which is kind of scary. But regardless, the question is the adoption rate of those currencies, and in this case, if financial institution is going to adopt it, or government is going to allow it. Now, there are some who's allowing it, which we'll talk about in a bit. Then there are governments who is not allowing it because there are dire consequences that they perceive. So here we have, according to techtimes.com, Paraguay, the country, will legislate cryptocurrency next month, which will make crypto a legal tender. So it's going to be legit in terms of transacting in their country here, and using such as Bitcoin and PayPal here. So it's going to be considered as a legal tender now moving forward. Now, whether is it that to their benefit? Now, one of the downsides of cryptocurrency is it uses up a lot of energy, and it's not conducive, especially the GPU shortage that we have, and the electricity that it drains. So it's an uphill battle, but as long as there's adapters here, whether financial institutions, as I mentioned, or even governments adopting here, is kind of interesting here. So here we have Paraguay, or was it? Let's see here. So here we have Paraguay supporting the Bitcoin cryptocurrency. So obviously, number one, the cryptocurrency is Bitcoin. So you have a group here called Grupo Cinco, one of Paraguay's most extensive entertainment groups, will be accepting various cryptocurrencies, so such as Ether, Chiles, Bitcoin, next month. So obviously, if there are businesses who's going to accept it and the government is going to allow it, then it's going to grow in popularity and so forth. Now, obviously, Paraguay is just one country. Question is, how about other countries as well? Obviously, the issue here is the consumption of electricity here. Now, there are some nations, in this case, they are using hydroelectric to power their Bitcoin here, but there's such countries such as China is the totally complete opposite here, who is against cryptocurrency because of the perceived value. In a sense, it's somewhat vague. In a sense, it's not the same as owning a stocks of a company, that the valuation or the true value of a company. But with regards to cryptocurrency, you're just relying on mining them. So what if everything were to go away? What happens to that? So everything that you invested on it would go up in smokes, which is kind of scary. And as I mentioned, the main issue, as mentioned here, is the gaining power that it consumes. And that's why the on and off again relationship of Mr. Elon Musk and cryptocurrency. He likes Bitcoin, he does not like Bitcoin. He likes Ether, he does not like Ether. He likes Dogecoin, and so forth and so forth. So the question here is, big nations such as the United States, China, Europe, will they adopt the cryptocurrency here? It's a matter of only time whether they will adopt it or not, and time will only tell. If they can solve the energy, massive energy or excessive energy consumption, then they have a better chance. But in terms of investing on it, only the markets can decide whether that's a long-term viable solution here. Anyway, finally, for our last story, as I mentioned, a game that was popular way back in the 90s when I was younger is now being revived and being popularized again. So it's called the Tamagochi here. So it used to be a small device where you play with it. It's just like any game that you're playing now where it's a pet. So you're trying to keep it alive, trying to give it attention and so forth. It used to be black and white. Now they're using better technology, obviously, with more colors here. Anyway, according to the article here, we have TheVerge.com. The article states that Tamagotchi is back with a new smartwatch that lets you strap a needy digital pet to your wrist. So it used to be you have to carry it like with a chain, keychain of sorts. Now you can have a watch. Kind of weird if I were to wear it and then bring it to work or go to school and so forth, and people would see me playing with my with my Tamagotchi here. Anyway, let's see here. So according to the article, they mentioned it's being reinvented after 25 years. So it's been really a long time. So it's now called the Tamagotchi Smart. Puts creature into colorful smartwatch, allowing you to strap the digital pet, and so you can enjoy tons and tons of hours of time being with it. So it has a touch screen, so you can pet it with your little friend. It has voice recognition for chatting as well as speedometer. So let's see this one. So it's been in the market for quite some time. And what's interesting here is it's been released originally way back in the 90s, as mentioned. It was a big success. I don't know, did I own a Tamagotchi? I saw someone own a Tamagotchi at the time. So it was exciting at the time. You know, that was the Switch or the Game and Watch at the time, if you even know what the Game and Watch was. Anyway, so there was global enthusiasm since its popularity, leading to even a spin-off, which is kind of interesting. A anime series, you have video games, and even a movie based on that one. So now they've updated for the next generation here, which is, providing with screen color. Obviously, more color is better than black and white. And providing you wireless connectivity for interacting with other Tamagotchi. So, which is kind of interesting. So, I'm sure this is geared toward for kids or kids alike, so to speak. And what's interesting, the battery life is going to last around 30 hours or more. So, it's kind of interesting. Would you be interested to buy that? It looks cute. You know, obviously offering different features would be interesting. So I'm sure kids is going to enjoy it as much. Anyway, so if you're interested to purchase one, well, you have to wait a little bit. It's only available in Japan as of yet. So the company who manufactures, if you can see, it's Bandai here. So known for their Gundam, figurines and toys. So it's going to be released later this year, around late November, in the sum of around 7,500 yen or around $670. So that's roughly around 3,500 pesos. So it's not kind of expensive, not cheap also. So, obviously it's somewhat basic in terms of being able to do with it in terms of features. So, I'm sure there's a lot of people who's going to enjoy, especially the next generation who haven't seen what a Tamagotchi is. So, will it create another big craze here in the next few months or next year or so? We'll have to wait and see. And hopefully, Japan, it would be released outside of Japan, whether in Asia, in Europe, or even in America's region here. Anyway, that concludes our discussion for today. Leave the link in the description below if you want to check out the full article in all the topics that I've discussed today. Thanks for watching. As I mentioned, stay tuned for more business focused live every Fridays here. Same. I moved the time slot now. It's now 3 p.m. So I've adjusted slightly here. Anyway, if you have questions, feel free to leave your comments down below, and I'll get back to you. As always, I'll see you again next time. Same time, same channel. Take care.